Well, hello everybody, and welcome to my first video. It's the first video I've ever done like this. And basically, to help you guys out, I know some of you are struggling without having the classroom environment, without being able to talk about it with your friends and have me as a teacher there to help you. So the idea is just to do a couple of videos talking through the activities that I set you as homework in the first week of distance learning, and hopefully, all being well, then to do a series of videos just to go through elements of Owen Shear's and of Othello, sort of scene by scene, perhaps poem by poem, if I have time. I don't know. It takes quite a long time to put these things together, but let's see how they go. And if you find them useful, I'm happy to continue doing them. So, first of all, really just hoping that you're all okay, that you're all safe and well, that your families are well. I know some of you have been sick. It's been a scary time for most of us, and a time that I mean, I'm a lot older than you guys, but I've never lived through anything like this either. So it's been just a whole new experience. But some nice aspects, like being able to spend more time, I guess, with family, being able to do gardening and things like that, which have been great. But yeah, generally, I'd much rather be there with you all in the classroom, and you know, I like the energy of of teaching like that, of being a teacher, the debate in the room, the ideas that spring up. All that is missing right now, and I really miss it. I hope you like the music of the Star as well. That's actually my best friend's blues band, and hopefully I won't get sued for using the copyright. And also this beautiful picture that I conjured up, and hopefully you get the reference to Othello there. So without further ado, let's go into the work.
Fun fact: Iago is the third longest part of Shakespeare's plays of Othello's 3,323 lines. Iago speaks 1,098, almost 250 more than Othello himself. Only Richard III at 1,171 and Hamlet at 1,476 have more.
Alright, so I hope you appreciate the Searon's production values on this video. So let's jump into Act 3. Scene 2 is a very short scene. Basically, so this scene enables us to see several things. It enables us to see Othello as quite a serious person, I think, in his duty, in his office as general, in the fact that he's attending to the fortifications. It allows us to see that it's more proof, basically, that before Iago's interventions, he's a serious man of integrity in his job. It also shows Iago's apparent loyalty, which is a constant theme in this act. The dramatic irony between the appearance of Iago's loyalty and his true machinations under the surface. The fact that he addresses him as good lord with reverence. And it also plays an important part basically as a plot device, to show how Iago is executing his plan, because it separates Othello from Desdemona through his duties, but also during this time we know that Othello's instructed Cassio to go and plead with Desdemona for clemency and for forgiveness, to intervene on behalf of her husband. So really at this point, it's serving dramatic irony. We know that Iago is hoping to time their return to Desdemona with Cassio's plea to her, so that he can set up that meeting behind Othello's back, and lay the foundations for his accusations that are going to come in the next scene as to Desdemona's infidelity. Okay, next. And Starwipe. Yes, Starwipe. So number 2. Act 3, Scene 3, look at the conversation between Desdemona and Cassio. How is love between Othello, Desdemona and Cassio depicted here? How is camaraderie portrayed? Okay. So, and I've put here a few guidelines of the sort of things that we can look at, particularly terms such as greaves, lord, and service. And here we're going to see Cassio, as we always see Cassio, as the archetypal Venetian gentleman, speaking about himself in the third person, which is always nice. Bounteous madam, whatever shall become of Michael Cassio, he's never anything but your true servant. So this really, the nature really of Cassio's love here is very much one of duty, of loyalty. He's using, as usual, the language of the court, service, and Desdemona again is reiterating that love. So, you do love my lord, you've known him long, and be well assured that he in strangeness stand no further off than in polite distance. So, in a polite distance, meaning Othello has to take these actions against Cassio. It's part of his office as general. It's part of the politeness of his position as a general, in that he's not able to ignore what has happened, which has been a very grave act in which Cassio has wounded the former governor of the island. So he has to take this, his strangeness as it is, the fact that he's estranged from him, I guess we would say, is a politeness, it's a formality. To which Cassio replies, so that policy may either last so long, or feed upon such nice and waterish diet, or breed itself out of circumstance, that I being absent, and my place supplied, my general will forget my love and service. So Cassio here is saying, yeah, I understand that, but he's worried that the general will forget his love for him, his loyalty, and the fact that he's served him for a long time already. And Desdemona's really reassuring him that, with Emilia as her witness, she's given a warrant of his place and assured a vow to friendship. So we get this very ceremonial, courtly again language of vows, oaths, loyalties, to the last article, a kind of almost legal terminology there. That her lord shall never rest. So even though she's showing deference to her husband as her lord, and a lot of you have commented on this in the mock exam, for instance, the use of her calling her husband as a lord, she's actually seems to be wielding quite a lot of power here. That's something that Iago has played on, the fact that Desdemona, who is referred to as the captain's captain, has a great deal of influence over Othello. So whilst she's using this semantic field of legal language, solicitor, thy solicitor shall rather die than give thy cause away, she's also happy to intervene on his behalf out of love for him, I suppose it would come under the love of duty, almost a camaraderie. Desdemona's almost in a military position on the island in the middle of the war, here vowing to sort of intercede on behalf, with her husband on behalf of Cassio. So lots of quite nuanced forms of camaraderie, of the language of duty. And the terms there, lord and service, come into that. Okay. So number 3, why does Cassio leave? How does Iago manipulate this event as he arrives with Othello? Look also at Iago's language and syntax. And we have the example of, Madam, not now, I'm very, very ill at ease, unfit for mine own purposes. So this is, I think, a device you see quite a lot with Shakespeare's tragedies, in which there's almost a chance meeting or a fork in events which could have gone a different way. So, for instance, Cassio could have decided to stay and talk to Othello when Iago's there, and that might have had massive consequences for the rest of the play. It might have gone some way to averting the tragedy later on in the text. But because Cassio decides to leave, Iago's then able to manipulate his seeming, the fact that he seems to be sneaking around and trying to, basically in fear of Othello. So basically, I think that's what's happening here in terms of the narrative structures, in terms of the device of their meeting. We've got, let's take this part. So I'm actually holding my laptop in my lap here, speaking into a microphone. This is all very weird for me. Okay. So Emilia says, "Madam, here comes my lord," meaning Iago. And lord, I know a lot of you made a lot out of the fact that the women referred to their husbands as lords. That was, and you see this in Shakespeare's other plays, but that was a very common terminology. But it obviously shows the patriarchal structure of marriage, in that the father gives the daughter away, and then, as Desdemona said, preferring her father to you when she's speaking to Brabantio, then the husband becomes a sort of lordly figure over the wife there. So that is a common term of address. So maybe aside from the wider societal facts of it, it's maybe not. What I'm trying to say is, don't milk the fact that the women call their husband their lords too much. I think there's more interesting things to talk about. It shows the wider patriarchy. It shows the fact that marriage was an institution which keeps women in a subservient role, definitely. But as a term in itself, whilst it sort of upholds the religious patriarchy, can we say, the fact that Jesus as Lord presides over the institution of marriage, and any subversion of marriage is therefore a subversion of the sort of religious structures. That's important. That's very important. But perhaps don't dwell on that too much as an AO2 language feature, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. So here comes my lord. Cassio, madam, I'll take my leave. Desdemona, why stay here and speak and hear me speak? Cassio, madam, not now. I'm very ill at ease, unfit for mine own purposes. Okay, so he's saying here he's ill at ease. He's fallen prey, I think, to Iago's plan, which is to appeal to Desdemona to then intervene with Othello. And I think he's ill at ease because that's not the way to do these things in Jacobean society. You don't appeal to somebody's wife. And Iago successfully convinced him that that is the correct course of action. And Iago's also successfully executed his arrival with Othello to witness Cassio's sneaking away. So it's a particular turning point, I think, in the events of the play. It could have gone differently if Cassio. It's another example of tragedy, in that if Cassio had only listened to Desdemona to stay in here and speak, and then to speak with Othello, the whole affair could have been brought out into the open, and perhaps Iago's plan would not have succeeded. What can we say about syntax? I'm not sure what I was asking when I came up with that. I guess we see the repetition of madam. It's almost anaphoric. You know, he said, "Madam, I'll take my leave. Madam, not now. I'm very, very ill at ease." It shows Cassio's anxiety. It shows his. It shows the inner conflict, I think, within him that Iago has engendered. It also shows again his deference and loyalty to Desdemona. Okay. Star wipe. Okay, number 4. How does Desdemona look to convince Othello to speak with Cassio? How does she depict him elsewhere in this speech, which leaves her vulnerable to Iago's machinations? And focusing on, so Michael Cassio that came a wooing with you, and so many a time when I've spoke to you dispraisingly hath ta'en your part. I think what's interesting about that particular speech with between Desdemona and Othello is just how fervently Desdemona seeks to convince Othello. And she's, almost speaking with desperation there. Why then tomorrow night, or Tuesday morn, on Tuesday noon or night, on Wednesday morn, I prithee name the time, but let it not exceed 3 days. She's speaking, she's desperate to know the exact time when she can speak to Othello. The whole speech has an almost religious context to it. So, in faith he's penitent, yet in his trespassing our common reason. So, there we see that it's an almost religious pleading to Othello, using very Christian terminology: penitence, faith, his trespass, which sounds like it's coming straight out of the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our trespasses. So a pleading is from a religious angle. It's pleading to Othello's Christian forgiveness. And another insight here, I think, that Michael Cassio came a wooing with you, seems to suggest that when Othello was wooing Desdemona, that Cassio was present there. Possibly, as well, we will see later on that Iago will manipulate that fact once he learns it, and it's evidence of the way that Iago works, the way that he can turn something which is a romantic wooing, he can turn it inside out, upside down, so that it becomes incriminating for Michael Cassio. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so question 5. Analyse this oxymoronic passage, and also how it may serve to foreshadow future events. Excellent wretch, perdition catch my soul, but I do love thee, and when I love thee not, chaos is come again. Okay, it's an interesting term of endearment, isn't it? Excellent wretch. I think it really follows Desdemona's pleading on behalf of Cassio, to which he says, I'll deny thee nothing, whereon I do beseech thee, grant me this to leave me but a little to myself. So he wants the time to think about it for himself, but it shows again the weight of Desdemona's importance in Othello's decision making. And Desdemona is always respectful and deferent. So she says, shall I deny you? No, farewell, my lord. She has that obedience as a wife, yet is speaking very clearly from her heart and very frankly and very fervently on behalf of Cassio. So Othello's left in this position where he says, "Perdition catch my soul, but I do love thee." So perdition is this sense of an eternal damnation. And when I love thee not, chaos is come again. I think this is a great quotation to show Desdemona's importance in Othello's life. She gives him order, she gives him reason, a raison d'être, a reason for living. Without her, he will get chaos, and it's a term which foreshadows the chaos that will arrive later on in the play. Yeah, so it's a classic, I think, example of Shakespeare juxtaposing opposites, showing chaos and order, chaos and reason, salvation and damnation within this moment. In considering the salvation of Cassio, in actual fact, Othello will ultimately be facing perhaps his own questions of judgment on his own salvation, on his wife, which is just about to come with the accusations from Iago. Okay, number 6. How is Iago seeking to instill paranoia in Othello through his speech here? Did Michael Cassio, when you wooed my lady, know of your love? He did, from first to last. Why dost thou ask? But for a satisfaction of my thought, no further harm. Why of thy thought, Iago? I did not think he'd been acquainted with her. Oh yes, and went between us very oft. Indeed. Indeed. Aye, indeed. Discernst thou aught in that? Is he not honest? Honest, my lord? Honest, aye, honest. My lord, for aught I know. What dost thou think? Okay, I'm going to stop here, don't worry. So how is Iago seeking to instill paranoia in Othello through his speech here? Well, we see Iago very cleverly has picked up on the fact that Desdemona has let slip the information that Cassio was present during their wooing. And obviously for Iago that is gold, isn't it? That's gold that he can use. That his character is opportunistic, Machiavellian. He will seek to exploit bits of knowledge like that to twist them and make insinuations to cast sort of seeds of doubt in Othello's mind there. So he's very clever. I mean, in here is, I wouldn't say, it's a kind of stichomythia in the sense that they both exchange very short sentences. And Iago is really controlling the conversation here. He's asking questions but not giving the context to why he's asking them. He's making little statements without explanation. And Othello's picking up on these and wanting to know why. Why is he talking like that? Why is he asking these things? Why? You can see that syntactically. It's quite an unusual. It's not in iambic pentameter or blank verse. It stands out. It's not florid. There's no imagery here. It's a kind of stunted type of conversation, which cleverly shows Iago's deliberate withholding of information and Othello's insecurities that are latent and ready to be exploited. In that he wants to know why have thy thought, Iago. And if we go a bit further on to number 7, what effect does Iago's repetitive stichomythia have on Othello? We really, as it becomes stichomythic the further it goes along. What dost thou think? Think, my lord? Think, my lord, by heaven, he echoes me, as if there was some monster in his thought, too hideous to be shown. So we get this very repetitive, seeming reluctance to speak his mind, Iago, but very cleverly delivered, because he's clearly going to speak his mind, and he's laying down again the foundations of suspicion through this use of sticomythia. We get the repetition of think. And Othello comments on that technique of sticomythia as an echoing. By heaven, he echoes me, as if there was some monster in his thought, too hideous to be shown. Monster again, linking to notions of bestiality, of the green-eyed monster, of jealousy, of appearance and reality, of the fact that the monster is in the thought. And here's a rare moment of awareness from Othello, which is ironic again, that yes, there is a monster in Iago's thought, this base monster of the malcontent who just wants to destroy the order, destroy Othello's happiness, destroy the existing order. And Othello here sees that rarely, but unfortunately is not able to act upon it in a way that would again give him the reality of the situation and potentially avert the tragedy which is coming. Okay, number 8. How is false love presented here? Comment on dramatic irony and Iago's clever use of pauses in his syntax. So false love being one of the key types of love that you often get confronted in across in essays. So looking just at this extract, some horrible conceit, if thou dost love me, show me thy thought. Iago says, my lord, you know I love you. To which Othello replies, I think thou dost, and yet, for I know thou art full of love and honesty, and waste thy words before thou givest them breath. Therefore these stops of thine fright me the more. For such things in a false disloyal knave are tricks of custom. Okay, so again, a deeply an ironic scene, we see dramatic irony there because sorry, I'm sitting in a really creaky chair, which is probably really annoying. Okay, so where was I? I creaked myself out of concentration. So okay, I'm going to have to pause. I'm coming back. Oh God. Okay, sorry about that. So, basically, yeah. So Othello here is actually seeing the nature. He's seeing the conceit of Iago's speech. That is not honesty. Conceit is the antithesis of honesty. It's something that's created artificially. So his conversation here is a conceit. And finally says, well, show me your thoughts. Iago, my lord, again that deferential, dutiful love. You know I love you. Othello, I think thou dost. And again, repeating that absolutely hugely repeated epithet of honest Iago. But he recognises that he's weighing his words before he gives them breath. Now Othello, and this is very clever on Iago's part, because Iago has done this before. When does he do it before? That's right, back in Act 2, in which he's basically commenting on the fight between Cassio and Montano, and Montano says, if partially fined or leagued in office, thou dost deliver more or less than truth, thou art no soldier. And Iago very cleverly uses a classic Iago trick and says, touch me not so near. I'd rather have this tongue cut from my mouth than it should do offence to Michael Cassio. So he presents as though he doesn't want to speak ill. He wants, out of love, he wants to protect people. When in actual fact, he's presenting a false version of himself. He's doing the opposite. He's giving his words, his lies, his illusions and falsities gravitas by appearing to be an honest character in his speech. So I like that quote, therefore these stops of thine fright me the more. That's exactly the ruse that Iago is using through his speech, his syntax, the stichomathia, and it displays a false, disloyal love, which Othello remarks here, for such things in a false, disloyal knave are tricks of custom. Yes, these are Iago's tricks of custom, and it's only the fact that he's so respected, so revered. Iago is able, in a Machiavellian sense, to manipulate that in order to make his conceit work through his speech. Okay, and I think that takes us to the end of this part of work. So hopefully that was useful. It wasn't ideal for me. It wasn't my best performance. It's not like being in a classroom and speaking to you all, having your ideas bouncing off things. But hopefully it was of some use to you. Okay. So I'll if it's been useful to you, let me know. If anyone has any, I'm going to try and think of, build some interaction in here and get people to offer questions, opinions. We'll try and get this a bit more interactive. But this is a first go at that. Okay. See you next time.
Well, I'm a stranger here, just a little town.